Give up for Tim Whiting, everyone. How are you, Tim?
Nice to be here.
Thank you for coming. Really appreciate you taking the time out
That's
to
okay.
come and have a bit of a chat with us.
It's a good start to a Monday morning.
It is,
Yeah, it is,
exactly.
it is,
Good
it
way
is.
to start the week.
You know, nice podcast studio as well. So I just wanted to ask, how are you? First thing first.
Well, my hands are slightly cold because I line biked over from Barnes and Putney this morning. Where are we? We are end of October. So it's not quite the summer, but I'm sort of hanging on into early autumn.
It's funny, I was literally just saying to Nathan this morning that I've had to start wearing my thermals again because it's starting to get a little bit nippier.
I suppose the other thing is we were just talking about how well Arsenal are playing.
Yeah.
I think there's 3 of us all supporting Arsenal.
There are.
And we're top of the Premiership,
Top
doing
of the
all
table,
right.
of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Has to be
So a good
noted.
weekend.
Great
Yeah, it was a
weekend.
Great weekend. And I'm just starting to get hopeful that we can make it all the way as well. Definitely, for sure, man, for sure.
This
Well,
is the year.
This is the year.
This reminds me of when, I think it was like the recent World Cup, and everyone was saying it's...
Take it back to 1995. What actually inspired you to start this company?
Well, it goes back a little bit before that, is that my father was a photographer in Soho, so he was a 6'4" Afghan coat, kind of trendy, cool photographer, and went to work in jeans and a t-shirt. He did pretty well. And that business actually started in labs before cameras moved to digital, so that was photography, which was very competitive in the late 60s, and then moved into labs in 1968, actually the year that I was born. He was 20. And it was successful. That period of time, the advertising industries, the film, the creative industries were beginning to boom. ITV had come in, I think it was 1954, and started with commercial TV away from the BBC and BBC Two. And that was great for advertising, PR. In fact, many, many different parts of the sector came to life during that period. So photography, makeup artists, hairstylists, PR, advertising. The population of the UK is now 68 million people. There's 35 million people working, and there's about 10% in the creative industries. So it's a really big sector. So you have people in now in podcasts, you have people who in production companies, film companies, they're all funded off the back of advertising. So he did well. He was right at the beginning of that. Enough to send myself and my sister to good schools. So I did state school and then I did boarding school, and I think that was a good combination. But my grandfather, who was born in 1909, I come from around this area. He was asked by his colonel to go and join him in the Association of British Insurers. And he was a sort of David Niven character. Little tash, 6'2", always ran with the fashion. So when there were trilby hats and camel coats, scarf, cravats, and then he moved into bowler hats and striped suits. And I always looked at him and thought, oh, I want to be like him. I don't really want to be wearing jeans and t-shirt. So I'll be more like him. So I sort of stumbled into financial services. And I think, people have stopped stumbling into things. They want to be very prescriptive when they leave their A-levels or university. When I started back in the 80s, it didn't really matter what you did. Is that you could go to work if you wanted to. I chose to go to work. Friends of mine that wanted to be doctors or accountants or lawyers, or then of course it was the banking industry were doing really well. They all wanted to go and do that. I think predominantly because of money. I'm not sure they understood what banking was at the time.
I agree.
And so they went into universities, and then there was another group of people that wanted to do enology of some sort, and they were catered for by polytechnics. And then I think it was in the Blair government they changed all the polytechnics to universities. They worked out, I think, that if people went to higher education, the tax take was greater for them, so why not encourage people to go into higher education, call it all a university. But mine wasn't, so no, I started at the age of 17, 18, and it went from there, really. I didn't start with Timothy James and Partners. I started in 3 or 4 different companies before that.
Wow.
And were they all in financial services?
Yeah, I was lucky. I get asked that question, did I start in doing something else? I've only ever worked in financial advice. At the time, you could, if you went into financial services, I think you could break it down into 4 or 5 areas. You could work for an insurance company. That was typically Prudential, Sun Life of Canada, Allied Dunbar and Abbey Life were the first unit-linked companies. Most insurance companies at that point had been around for 150 years.
Yeah.
There were Sun Alliance, which was Phoenix, Royal London, Scottish Providence, Scottish Mutual, Commercial Union, General Accident, Equitable Life, Norwich Union. I mean, none of them exist anymore. They struggled in the banking liquidity crisis,
Of course.
but they were huge brands for 150 years. I mean, MPI, which was the one with squirrels, was the second biggest payer of pensions in the UK. So if you wanted to, you could go into insurance companies, brilliant at training people. But the industry evolved a lot. From 1986, we had the Financial Services Act, which the government worked out that people need to save money through savings products, savings in building societies and banks, and also longer term in pensions. But it shouldn't be a sales industry run by people who aren't qualified. It should be a qualified professional industry, much like accountants and lawyers are. So 1986 saw the change of that. I think I started in 1985. So I was right at the beginning of that
inception.
Escalator of change. The second area, so insurance companies, historically that had been the guy from Prudential used to knock on your mum and dad's, or your grandparents in your case, your grandparents' front door and say, do you want to put in 5 shillings? Do you want to put in a £1 into your savings plan this week? A lot of people were paid weekly wages. They weren't paid salaries, and that's how they did it. So they had life assurance and they had savings plans. The second area would be high street banks, clearing banks. Again, pretty good at training. I mean, NatWest, Royal Bank of Scotland, Lloyds, those were the biggest ones. Midland Bank, which became HSBC, were the big ones at the time. You could start as a teller and work your way through. They'd train you. You become a manager. You were known by the community that you had the branch in, which were in market towns on the high street, old-fashioned banking. And you'd aspire to get, it was a great job because you knew everybody. You knew the greengrocer, you knew the hair salon, you knew the manufacturing industry, you knew everybody around you. So you knew who you were lending to and who you were helping to save. And then you had the private banking side of that. So that was Hawes, Coutts predominantly, Butterfield, Weatherby's. And then more recently Handelsbanken, where you're dealing with a different type of client, and they gave them bigger mandates, more freedom to lend to who they wanted to. So you had insurance companies in the banking sector. You then had discretionary fund managers. Now these were the old school type of fund managers. We called them stockbrokers. And they've evolved a lot over that period as well. So if your grandfather had 30,000 acres in Norfolk that you inherited, you'd also inherit the fund manager and your stockbroker from Rothschild or Waverton or Hambros. And today there's about 240 of them in the UK. And we now call them fund management groups. So UBS, Merrill Lynch, Brewin Dolphin, Quilters, Evelyn that used to be Smith & Williamson, Vestra, these are the big players today. But they were around and they generally catered for that top 3% of the population, mainly inherited wealth. If you were born into it, you were fine. Good luck to everybody else. I do think, so that's the 3, so insurance companies, the banks, then you've got the stockbrokers, now fund managers, and then people like me. People like me were what they called brokers in those days, which then split into independent advice, where you act for the client, you don't really have anything on a shelf behind you. You've got to have a broad breadth of experience of all the different things, and you're normally qualified in investment and pensions and in mortgages and debt. So it's very holistic. The other part is when you're restricted, and that is where you represent the client and you do the best you can from what's on the shelf behind you, provided by the insurance company. The biggest one in the UK at the moment would be St James's Place in the restricted space. So those were sort of the categories. I fell into the independent space. That's what I believed in. I think people should get independent advice. It's about providing the best and the most suitable solution in money with somebody that's going to be with you for the long term, that knows you, that you can phone and have a chat about stuff with.
I guess it's also about like freedom from bias as well. I think that a lot of people prefer the independent advice route because they sometimes might feel like if it's not that, then there are elements where other powers that be, I wouldn't say infiltrate, I think that's a bit too strong, but definitely like affiliations and what that can look like. That's definitely a bit of a rumor. But I'm curious because you mentioned, apart from obviously having gone to boarding school, which actually caught my ear because I went to boarding school as well. But when you spoke, you gave a very holistic view of the industry, and it seems like when you were younger, there was lots of different options available, and you're able almost to make a decision based on preferences or interests. Tell me what your views are, Nathan, but I think now the landscape's changed a lot. I mean, if you look at even, for example, the insurance industry, like we know loads of people who are like graduates who are trying to maybe get into that industry, struggling. I work in financial services at the Treasury, so I know definitely what some of the recruitment challenges we face from a government perspective are in financial services, particularly in like insurance, pensions and markets. But I just wanted to know what your views were in terms of how things have changed from that point, that pre-1995 era until now, in terms of just like the industry and not just recruitment, but retention, progression, talent.
That's a big question.
It's a tough one. That's a big question. You're a big guest, so I thought it's a tough one.
I chose because I want to look after people. You can be corporate, you can be B2B, you can be Barclays Bank looking after Microsoft. And how do you provide those services? I was interested in the individual. But I'm no different to any other 20-year-old. One, I had no idea. Two, I had no money in my pocket. And you find your path. I think work experience is something that people don't. I think employers should give back and give people work experience. Do 2 or 3 things whilst you're doing your A-levels or maybe your degree. And then you can help make your own mind up what part of, if you want to go into financial services, what you want to go into. And then you start getting up the step ladder and you tend to be good at things you like doing. The area that I chose was, I ended up in the creative world, which didn't really exist. Going back to the analogy before of, there were only 3 things that happened. Either you were born into money and you were given your money.
Yeah.
Well, none of us were going to do very well at that. Also, I didn't wear Wellington boots and have 30,000 acres in Norfolk. But I was lucky. I got given a good education. Okay, so I had a lot of self-belief. I don't know whether you found that. If you go to boarding school, you have to find your friends.
Yeah.
You have to find what you're good at and live with the rest.
Yeah.
I mean, that in life is
crucial.
So what happens, right? There's a lot of people you're not going to get on well with, but you have to get on well with people. You have to communicate well. I think routine is important in life. If you want to get on, if you get very, very busy, you need your routine. And I think boarding schools and everything's very routine.
Indeed.
But either you were born into that world. The second group of people, I think, were very academic. And many of my friends didn't have any money, but were so academic. Their parents were typically teachers, or one of them was a teacher. And they ended up being doctors and accountants and lawyers and going down that path where you needed to get to university. barristers. And they followed that path. And actually, it was a pretty straightforward path.
It was.
If you get your foot on that and you come out with the right, you're good at your P's and Q's and you can add up, you end up on the bottom of an escalator and you come out the other end 5 years later with your chartered something. Surveyor, chartered accountant, a doctor. But what about the rest of us? And that's the difference. You're talking about 90% of the population. So I don't think until you had ITV saying, we're going to create a small film called an advert, and Cadbury's get on board and work out they sell 4 times as many flakes on the back of one advert that reaches 10 million people.
All at once as well.
All in once. Is then you create another whole set of jobs, which is Soho. Photographers, editing, stylists, makeup, location, actors, actresses, scripts, commercial directors, production, editing. It's a whole industry that's off the back of, I can do one advert. And that was the rest of us. So we all found our space in that area, except for me. I ended up in financial services, but I chose to look after that group of people.
It was through that route as well.
Yeah. So you ask about how I started. I started because a friend's father said, guys, you can be a financial consultant. I'll get you a job at Sun Life of Canada. And so we both went, great, let's do it. He said, you'll be driving Panther Callistas by the time you're 19. I thought, well, that sounds good. And so that's what we did. And we went to Sun Life of Canada. It took me 3 months to work out I was actually selling life insurance, self-employed on commission.
Don't know if that would work in today's probation.
But you've got to work out what you're doing. So I ended up in Mayfair. I was trained and developed. Sun Life of Canada were very good at training. They had a conference centre in Wembley, and I found out all about pensions and life insurance and savings plans, and I focused on council owners' right to buy. Margaret Thatcher was in power, and she had said to those people that own council flats and houses, I'll give you a big discount if you want to buy it. So I used to go and knock on doors in council estates, drink a lot of tea, talking about how people could do that. By the time I was 19, another friend's mother said to him, you shouldn't be doing that. Move on. Team Financial Services, computer linked all the independent surveyors around the country, so that when you put your house on the market in Putney, it was on in Wimbledon, Wandsworth, Battersea, in all the linked branches. They needed mortgage people. So I came in as a mortgage person. So I learned all about mortgages. My 4 estate agents that I looked after were Southgate, 2 in Potter's Bar, and 1 in Radlett. So I found out all about how estate agency worked, all about how local building societies and banks worked, and how the property worked from buying, making an offer, to completing and working with solicitors. So I loved that, did all right at that. They gave me a Ford Escort, and if you know me, that wouldn't be my car of choice, but any car when you're 19 is a great car. And then a friend of mine, we shared a flat together in Olympia, said, I've seen a job, and actually I thought the recruitment company was the business I was going to join. I was electric in the interview. And then he said at the end, right, I'm going to place you at this company. And I said, oh, I thought I was coming here for the job. No, he said, no, I'm the recruitment company. And then I went to work for London Capital, and they were, this was when I was 20. They were very good at working with accountants and lawyers in the West End, getting work sent to them on investment and pensions and working with accountants. So by the time I was 21, I'd done the life insurance stuff, the tough stuff. I'd experienced lots of different subjects in financial services, and I had a client base of about 40, 50 people. And when the guy, this was when I was 21, the guy, the 35-year-old who was the operations director of London Capital, said, my girlfriend's business is in trouble. I think we can buy 2/3 of it for, I think it was £60,000. We can have a third each. Do you want to do it? I said, sure. And when I look back at it, I think I was mad. Had I known about regulation and compliance and the responsibility, you'd never do it. And today, actually, probably a lot of people don't do things because they're worried about stuff.
Exactly.
I was already thinking, me, myself, and I, this is going to be fun. I've always wanted to do my own thing, so let's get going. So that's how I started. I bought my first company when I was 21.
Do you feel that the mindset that you had back when you were young, and even though you wouldn't make those decisions now, that's the type of mindset you should have in order for you to be in the position that you're in today? So some of the decisions that you've made when you were young, people might be like, that's so reckless.
Yeah, I call it the lily pad theory, which
The
is
what? Sorry,
the lily pad
the
theory.
lily pad theory.
If you don't have the confidence and the self-belief to jump onto a lily pad, it may be the wrong lily pad, but you wouldn't find out about the next lily pad and the next lily pad and then the next lily pad had you not started on the first one. And then you find the right lily pad. So I think you've just got to have the self-belief, the desire, the work ethic, the ambition, the drive to do something. I just wanted to be successful, work hard, and then it went from there, really.
It reminds me of the Nike tagline, "Just do it."
Just do it.
Just get it done. You know?
Just get it
like,
done.
I definitely think, especially like with young people today, I don't know if ambition or self-belief is so much the issue. I feel like there's just a lot of like fear, or in a world where we have increased access to technology and especially social media, there's so much kind of portrayed by society about what can go wrong as the result of a decision, what the consequences could be that are negative. So it just instills a lot of sometimes fear and anxiety because, and I get this myself, I don't want to make a decision unless I know it's the right one.
Yeah, I think the problem in the UK today is that there's no growth. So therefore the tax take is lower. What Rachel Reeves will be doing at the end of November is looking about how does she increase the tax take, reduce the government spend. But I think that the most important thing will be how does she grow the economy, because if Timothy Jameson Partners can increase its turnover by increasing the services it provides, increasing the number of clients that it looks after, increases its profit, I can recruit 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 people a year into the business, train them, develop them, increase the profits. So she wins both ways.
Yeah.
She gets the PAYE of the new 10 people.
Yeah.
And my tax on my profits is increased.
Yeah. Plus unemployment's down.
Plus unemployment. But unemployment is also about people, I've got 4 children and I worry about, 2 of them are 18, twins, Isabella is 22, Kitty and Scarlett are 18, so they are in that space, they're coming up to that space. 2 of them are quite drama, creative, that's also a little bit of a panic. I don't think the industry particularly recovered from the actors and the writers' strike, which was only concluded in September 2023. So that creates the big void and a lot of doubt as well. So employers are trying to cope with the COVID loans, the Sybil loans, which they took from 2020, which was, hurrah! The government saved us, furloughing, Sybil loans, bounce back loans. Brilliant.
Which we're chasing back.
But now they've got to pay them back.
Yeah.
In an industry which is suffering because
Shrinking.
of the writers' strike. So advertising and the margins, I think, are getting tighter. The production companies feel that squeeze. And so difficult for them to go into the industry. Agents, you look at agents and all the brilliant things that they're doing for the clients that they look after. Are they taking on more people out of drama school? Probably not. They're probably trying to find the work for the people they already look after. Yeah. Are they taking on new agents and training them, because you need to spend at least 8 years, 9 years, 10 years developing your career to be useful? Are they investing in those people? Probably not at the moment. So I think people are probably, I think we need to work out, and the government needs to work out, how do they grow industries, sectors, businesses, and help entrepreneurs do that.
Yeah.
And then we can create more jobs, is what you're saying.
The Department for Culture, Media and Sport released a 5-year creative industrial strategy recently, and it kind of looks at tackling some of that. I do think though, and I really echo your point, the issue is that the industry itself is somewhat shrinking, and yet its dependencies, its costs are somewhat
But
rising.
where are the new industries?
Exactly.
If sometimes industries, I talk to people who are coming up to retirement, and when you're looking after self-employed people, freelance people in film, TV, advertising, sometimes the industry retires them before they're ready to retire. Because if you're self-employed, never sit with this guy who's self-employed who runs his own business and says, how are you doing? How's your week? If they don't answer, it's brilliant, then they're doing something wrong. Because if you're in charge of your business, you should design it around what you're great at and what you enjoy doing and what needs to be done, but developing it all the time. So those people who end up retiring, they're actually, by the time they're 60 and 70, they're loving what they do. They've cracked it. They've been doing it for 50 years. So they don't want to really stop. And I tell you why. When they go home, they're a nobody. When they walk in the office, they're a somebody.
Yeah, it's true. Everyone's big when they're in the office, but when they go back home, it's just everyone else.
So the real question is about how we save, and we need to work out for this government is also when you create the growth and you create jobs, but people need to save for tomorrow, and there isn't enough surplus income at the cost of living to save. So employers are being made, not only did they get the national insurance went up from 13.8% to 15% employers' national insurance in the last budget, but also in previous budgets, we have to now pay for pensions. It's not a choice, it's not a benefit from the employer, is that you can't give people more money by increasing their salary or wages. What the government's saying is they have to opt out. If they really want to opt out, they can opt out. But really we want to make it so that every employer has got a basic level of pensions to help people save. So we need to create more of a savings culture so that when they do retire, is that they go to work because they want to go to work, because they love what they're doing, they enjoy it on their terms, but have the option of stopping work. You're not doing it because you need to pay the bills. So our job in what I do for a living is a lot of it is about, do you buy a second property? Do you pay down your mortgage? How do you have enough money in pensions, investments, in ISAs, premium bonds, cash in the bank? Do you want to give money to the next level down? Do you want to give money to your grandchildren? Because each generation is getting poorer. So the generation 3 up are going, right, we'll help. And up until recently, you could pass your pension fund down to the next generation after you'd used it and you died, whatever's left went to the next generation and then went down to the next generation. It still happens that way, but with a 40% tax bill, which came in last year. So I think, the savings bit is very, in what I do for a living, when you've worked with people for 30 years, is they know and you know that we all did this together. Whatever that life looks like at the end, we trusted each other to get there. Then the question is how successful it is.
I wanted to ask a question. I was reading into an article and it was mentioning about how you don't like to have clients that are professional footballers. Now, the reason why I wanted to get into a bit more in depth about it, but
you have to confirm or deny that
Yeah,
statement.
By the way, I
first of
wasn't
all.
quite happy about that article.
oh really?
That's not quite what I said.
I was going to say, before we get into the question, you have to
Yeah.
at least give the opportunity to.
Yeah, no, I don't. Look, we don't mind looking after footballers. It's great, but the principle is the football industry has agents and those agents are businesses in themselves, and they will want to recommend their own financial services, lawyers, people around when they take on a new player. The analogy was being used that footballers tend to move clubs quite often. So they can move clubs and they can move agents quite often in their career. Their career, the normal retirement date for a footballer is 35. So they only have maybe 20 years from age 15 to 35
At best.
to look after their career at best. So they could move a lot. Now, I would love to have a footballer that stayed with me for 30 years and you can make a difference, a big difference. I looked after Kevin Campbell for a while. But he then went to Turkey and so he needed different, they also go abroad. I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
In terms of the film industry, the production companies, we want self-employed people who run their own companies, entrepreneurs, because they're time poor, they recognize the need for it, they really need your help, particularly in funding and corporate finance, and helping them build their business, retaining their staff, giving people share options and pensions and benefits to keep the team together. And that's a long-term piece of advice, long-term relationship. And you have time to do it. Stock markets aren't always going up. We've had a couple of good years. But there will be a crash at some point in the future. And some people who are only with you for a year, that's a really tough relationship, education process that you go through to understand what impact that would have to them. If you're a footballer or somebody who only has a very short career, it's very easy to move on. It's very easy to change your view of risk, all because one event that happened too quickly. It didn't get a chance to recover, and for them to go, oh, I know why I'm with Tim. Our business is very long-term relationships, build long-term bricks in the wall, one brick at a time.
I think that's quite, I'm not sure what the word is, not insightful.
Well, I'll tell you the other thing that's quite important for members of staff as well. You're interested in long-term, loyal members of staff because you're investing in them all the time. And the more that some of them who really go above and beyond, I can visibly see them in the office at 7:45 in the morning. I can see them there at 6, 7 o'clock at night. I can see them doing their exams. I can see them saying, can you give me some more work? How does this work? I'm not sure about this. Asking questions. They will look back at their year and think, at Timothy Jameson Partners, oh, it was so hard work. But they feel great in themselves. They feel, I've achieved something. I've moved on from the person I was. I don't recognize who I was 2 years ago. But if that's what you want to do is, and going back to what we were talking about before, sometimes it doesn't matter when you leave university or finish your A-levels. If you just end up in the right company, with the right energy, motivation, clear leadership, there's a proper hierarchy. Everybody knows where they are. Who's running the ship? That they spend time with people and they want to develop people and then go for a drink out in the evenings, be together. It's a great, you feel the energy, and that's a great business. So you might decide that you want to be a footballer. I listen to my 16-year-old Archie. Dad, I want to be a professional golfer. He plays off 3. He wants to be a footballer. They just lost the Independent School Cup at PPR in the finals. But he got to the final.
Yeah,
and he was playing 3 years above his age group. So he's really keen on sport. And as a father, you're going, oh no, not sport. Don't go down the sport path. But if you ended up in a sports marketing business that's full of young, great leadership, successful, he might go, that's great. I'm in a team.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned kind of like finishing uni and moving into the treasury was that you have like roles, and then those roles will sit within companies, and those companies will sit within an industry or sector, and they're all at different levels. So for example, like I'm a policy advisor in the treasury within financial services, but then the treasury sits as part of government, right? You know, public provision. And going back to the point you mentioned on like, you know, the culture of a workplace, what you can learn from it, how it can affect you. I think there's this very almost simplistic view that like if you study a certain subject, you can go and work a certain career. So if you I did economics, for example, study economics, go be a banker, obviously in a bank, and then that's kind of it. But actually, you can use what you studied to work in a industry or sector that you're interested in, but with different roles. So, like you said, working in sports, but in sports marketing or sports management or sports psychology, not necessarily as a sports person. And those how to.
But maybe the government should do better on the apprenticeship schemes, because I don't think we qualified for them, but yet I'm taking somebody at the starting level at 28,000, and then I've got to pay for all their training, which is 6 exams over 3 years normally, and they're probably not much good to me at the beginning, but they will become good with the training. And it's a two-way street. I need to know what they want, what's their expectation of Timothy James and Partners, and I need to explain to them what my expectation of them is over what period of time to get them to where they want to get to. And then you're working with that. Now, if the government said, we will contribute towards the training and the development of those people, we could take more people.
I couldn't agree more. I think there's a lot more that we need to do. I think when you talk about the cultures of especially financial services firms and partners, and how they have that kind of structure for newcomers into that industry and developing them, I think that's
I also think that industries need to, and sectors today, particularly in the West End in London, we all need to specialise a bit more. Being a generalist was great when I started. So your knowledge is really broad across mortgages, corporate finance, pensions, investment savings, PEPs became ISAs, all the technical side. All of us have to do CPD, which is called compulsory professional development. I have to do 22 hours with certificates every year to keep up my knowledge, and then I probably do another 30 hours a year of unstructured, finding out about stuff. I thought I'd do a touch typing course. Apparently I can do that.
You should, yeah.
Yeah, I'm allowed to do that. With 2 fingers, I think the world's moving faster than I am.
Well, here you are having a podcast, so clearly you're catching up 100%.
So what I did is when I started Timothy James and Partners in 1995, is I decided on 3 things, and we've won Independent Financial Advisor for London 3 years out of the last 4 by various publications. There are 1,300 regulated, FCA regulated firms, and I think about why do we win them? What is it? And it is about culture. If you have the right culture, everything spins off the back of that. If it goes wrong, the culture, you've really got to restart. So for me, what I did is I said, it's a referral-only business. So we only accept clients from accountants, lawyers, agents, and now we have 4,000 existing clients. So if they refer people and they've been with us for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, they go and see Tim, he'll help you with that. He's good at that subject. Great. So we're now at 50 new referrals a month.
Wow.
And they are all in the same, so you ended up specializing. So we found out lots about royalty income, lots about avids that are in production companies and how to fund them, what the cycle is of a barrister in their income when they start and when it goes up and down. You are knowledgeable in the sectors that you're referred to. And then we end up working with the same accountants and lawyers over the same 30 years that also specialize in those sectors. So we're all referring each other. And actually, we're only as good as the last referral. So a lot of actresses, a lot of production companies, a lot of TV presenters, all the comedians, their incomes were never straightforward. They're lumpy all over the place, and they need somebody to make some sense of that, to help them so that in 20 years' time, they're accepting the script or the piece of work because they love it,
not because they've got to.
Not because they've got to pay a mortgage.
Yeah.
The second part is that we don't pay commission or bonuses. I've never understood, and going back to when it all started back in 1986 with the Financial Services Act, is we needed to move more to lawyers and accountancy rather than selling stuff. Timothy James and Partners, none of the consultants earn commission or bonuses. It's a flat salary. There are none under the age of 30, because I think you've got to be a little bit of experience. You've got to hold the room. You've got to know about property. You've got to maybe have bought a property, rented a couple of properties, understand about stamp duty. Maybe you're married. Maybe you have children. Maybe you have kids at school. Maybe you also know how every single parent sitting out the school gates can't afford the school fees. It's not just you. But divorces, and all of that is to do about financial planning, financial structuring. Do I go for more of the pension fund or more of the house? Which is better for you as a person? So you've got to have some experience. So everybody's over the age of 30. They're all fully qualified. So I don't mind passing clients that are referred to me, of which I get 5 a month on average. I'm very happy to pass them to somebody who has twice the amount of time as me, because I consider them to be as able as I would be, probably better than me, because they've all just passed their exams. So that is important. So no commission, no bonuses. You don't want to change the behavior of somebody. You want them to do the right thing long term for someone. And then the third thing is we specialize in self-employed entrepreneurs, business owners. And actually in the creative industries, of the 3 million people in it, 47% are self-employed. So there was, if you think about what Timothy James and Partners is doing, there's no surprise that we ended up being very knowledgeable in that space, self-employed creative industries. We end up with some employed people, but they tend to need you. They tend to be quite sophisticated employed people. So that's what we did, and we specialized. More people found out about us, and more people said, can I come and see you? And the other thing we said is, because you've been referred, the first 2 meetings are on us.
Nice.
You need to work out whether you trust us and whether you like us.
Yeah.
And we need to know that we can make a difference and that it's worth it. And you asked me about what are the big changes in the industry now. Many more people go direct. They do it themselves. And that's where you would go to Hargreaves Lansdown. So sometimes, from our point of view, is we would say, you don't need to pay us. You're doing a really good job by yourself. I would go to Hargreaves Lansdown. You don't need to pay fees to an independent financial advisor. Most of them say, Tim, it's not my subject. I'm not going to see 70 fund managers to work out the best one each year. I'm not going to work out what platforms. I don't know what questions to ask. I don't know what bank I should be with that specializes in my area. I don't know what accountant to go to. I don't know which lawyer. Or I believe in relationships. People that run their own companies, they want people they love around them that are there long term, have their interests at heart, focus on what the client's trying to do over the next 10, 15, 20 years, and keep going on that. Remind them all the time, because they're very busy day to day, of what we're trying to do longer term. So we specialise, and I think that's important.
Brilliant. Just cautious of time and thinking about wrapping up. Nathan, do you want to maybe ask the last question to round us off?
Yes, I had one more question, and we are limited on time, but I wanted to ask about something I also saw in the article as well. So you talk about exit strategy and how people should plan in advance rather than just try to do everything last minute. I want to hear a little bit more about why you think this and why it's so important.
Okay, that's a good question. You can be a doctor, and private doctors can earn 500, 600,000 a year on their very specialist area. They're never going to have a capital value because they are them. When they stop work, that's it. So our job with them would be to say is buy a second property, buy a third property, pay your kids' school fees out in advance, do a lump sum deal with the bursar, put more money into pensions, although that's capped, build investment portfolios in subjects you're interested in, biotech, technology, so that when you retire or want the option of retiring, you created your own capital sum from your surplus income. The same would apply actually to actors, actresses, comedians. When they have a really good year, grab the money off them before they go and spend it. Put it into a house, stuff that they can't spend. They'll thank you 10 years down the road. But for limited companies like Timothy James and Partners is a good example, is that we or production companies that build up assets which they own, which have long-term recurring income streams. That we will turn over 13.5 million this year. The group will turn over 30 million this year. That they are, people look at, I mean, this is another thing for kids at university, don't look at what your parents are doing today. Go back to Tim doing council owner's right to buy at the beginning. That's where I am 30 years later, not at the beginning. Everybody has to roll their sleeves up at the beginning. We all start with not much, and it's how you develop on that path. But the self-employed person, the entrepreneur, the business person, could be employed. They could have a pension scheme, death in service, private healthcare, a car. They could take 30 days holiday and get paid for it. They could be ill and get paid for it. The self-employed freelance person doesn't have that. They give up a lot. Some people wish 20 years, 25 years into their PR company, their advertising company, their recruitment company, their production company, that they'd stayed as the employed person. So some of their friends will end up with more money and more financial success in the employed route than they did, because these people have to really put up with the terrible economic environments, the stock market crashes, the writers' strike, all of these hurdles which they didn't know at the start of the year that were going to happen to them. They have to live and run with it whilst they're busy paying a mortgage, which doesn't change. They're busy paying the kids' school fees, which only go up. It's difficult. So why did they do it? Because they think that one day they'll have something to sell. So we want to keep reminding them of the differences and how do you build a business to sell so that you can say, I did it. For me, I think it's not just about the money. I'm not very materialistic, actually. I don't have a car, for example. I'm much more interested in the legacy of what you create for people. Our group now has 260 employees. In London, 100 people, 4,000 clients we look after. I get a lot of pleasure in providing pure, independent financial advice, sitting on the client's side of the table, knowing that over that 20 years and 30 years, that everything that was created was a joint effort between me and the person you're looking after.
Yeah, thank you for that. Very insightful and a great way to round up, I think.
Yeah, definitely, man. Tim, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you. Yeah.
Considering we only met at a drinks party and the opening of a podcast studio.
Well, that's all it takes, clearly.
Yeah, man. One conversation. You know, like I said, we spoke for a while during that party as well. We had to speak for a while. Good and now look where we are. In the same podcast studio that we first met. Amazing stuff, man.
There you go, good.
But yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Well, thank you, Tim. Guys, my name's Nathan. This has been Opportunity Chats, and we are out.